Good morning, it's Brekke from BrekkeWrites, and this is my magical readathon owls wrap-up video. I participated in the owls for 2020 and I was able to complete 5 prompts, and I was able to achieve the one career that I was hoping for, which was herbologist with a certificate in magical shopkeeping. Now, I know for some people only reading 4 to 5 books doesn't seem like a lot for a readathon, but I have a bunch of kids and I ended up having to travel and I'm working from home. So this was a lot for me. I'm really excited. I read 5 books this month, which is the same amount that I read in the entire first quarter of this year. So this has really helped me get out of a reading slump. So the first class that I was able to complete was arithmancy. It was all about balance and the number 2. And so they wanted you to read a book outside of your favorite genre. My favorite genres are YA fantasy and certain kinds of nonfiction. So I had to read something outside of that. Pretty easy. There's a lot I could choose from. I listened to the audiobook of Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This was wonderful and was one of my 2 5-star reads of the month. This was the first book I finished. I absolutely loved it. This is a adult rom-com following the titular character, Chloe Brown. She's almost hit by a car in the very opening scene of the book and realizes that she needs to get a life. Chloe lives with disability. She has fibromyalgia, so she lives with chronic pain, and so she has not really lived her life since getting sick. Now she has a checklist, and she is going to live her life by doing all kinds of things like riding on a motorbike, going camping, things like that. Chloe has a somewhat hate-to-love relationship with her building's superintendent, Redford Morgan, who is a working-class artist. He's rough around the edges, but he's brilliant, and he has a heart of gold. And while the two of them don't get along in the beginning, it is more around a misunderstanding than it is true hate to love. I love this romance. It is steamy, at least to me. It was a little bit on the steamy side, but their relationship, their banter was so cute, and having a woman of color who also lives with disability represented in romance was wonderful and refreshing, and I am looking forward to Talia Hibbert's next book. The second class I was able to check off was Care of Magical Creatures, which was the hippogriff. You had to have a book with a picture of a creature with a beak on the cover. And I chose The Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren. This is another adult romance. These both are recommendations that I gleaned from Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. She loved both of them. And as someone who doesn't read romance herself, she really enjoyed these. And I figure I'm in that same category. I enjoyed this, but I didn't love it. Those of you who watched my vlogs know that the ending got a little bit more serious than I felt that the rest of the book should have been. It goes from light, fluffy, flirty rom-com to quite serious issues that are having to be dealt with, and I didn't sign up for that. So for me, this ended up being a 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed the first 70% of the book. It was wonderful. The last really 20-30% of the book I didn't care for as much. That's just my own personality. This is the story of Olive Torres, whose twin sister Amy gets sick, super sick, at her own wedding, and she and her husband are not able to take their honeymoon, which they won in a contest. It must be used that week or else it is forfeit, and so Olive decides to take her spot. Well, the only other person who's not sick is the groom's older brother, Ethan, who she doesn't like. They don't get along well, but they decide because it's a free trip to Maui, they're going to put aside their differences at least long enough to get there and to enjoy the honeymoon. Well, as you can imagine, things happen. There's fake dating, just one bed, all the great tropes. Like I said, this was a really fun book and I loved everything about it up until they get back from the honeymoon and they have to face the fallout of what's actually happening. And it goes, in my opinion, from fun and fluffy rom-com to a more chick-lit direction, which wasn't my favorite. This went from an A+ to me to like a B-, C+ as far as how I enjoyed it based on the end. If it had had a slightly different ending, I think this would have been a 5-star read for me. So The Unnie Mooners fulfills my Care of Magical Creatures, and that is the second class I can check off for my owls. The third class was Herbology, Blissful Toninia, which is read a book with the letter M, and that was one of the 2 poetry collections I was able to finish, Mistaking the Sea for Green Fields by Ashley Capps. Now, this month, or April, was also National Poetry Month, so I wanted to read 3 collections. I ended up only being able to read 2 because when we relocated, I only brought 1 collection with me, thinking we'd only be gone a week, and we were gone 2.5 weeks. But this is a collection From Ashley Capps. This is her first collection. I enjoyed this, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. I've never sat and read this entire collection in like one continuous like read. I didn't read them all in one day, but over a course of a few days. And the ones I loved in here, I absolutely adored. There were several that like got me in the fields. Mistaking the Sea for Green Fields, the poem of that name, I love, and I've read it before multiple times and I still love it. God Bless Our Crop Dusted Wedding Cake is another one that I really love. Black Ice, they just get me in the feels. But there were others that I just didn't like and I thought were not as good. She spends a lot of time focusing on loss of love, bad relationships with her mom and her father, and sort of the love lost there, but also the love that remains even when they're imperfect people, the loss of lovers, multiple lovers, one of whom clearly was married to someone else, loss of love for herself as she's going through different seasons. And while I appreciated some of them, it almost was too much of a meditation on the same thing. In my personal opinion, there wasn't enough variety. I know that I am unfairly comparing this to Pansy, which was such a good read for me, and I had read just before this, but I just didn't love it as much as I had hoped to love it. 3.5 stars though, still pretty good. And if you are looking for an interesting collection from definitely an underhyped poet, I would still recommend this one. And this fulfills my herbology requirement. My fourth requirement, and the last one that I need for my herbology degree with a focus in shopkeeping, is Potions, which is Shrinking Potions, having a book under 150 pages, and that is Pansy for me by Andrea Gibson. This is 115 or 116 pages. Let's see. Well, with the acknowledgments, it's 119, still under 150 pages. This was my second 5-star read. This is a beautiful collection of poetry. Andrea Gibson is queer and genderqueer, and they are a interesting, fascinating, aggressive, gut punch kind of poet. Everything in this feels urgent. Everything in this feels like it has energy and it has aggression, not in an angry kind of way, but in an in your face, here's my heart and it's bleeding in my hands and I'm handing it to you, take it kind of way. And I really appreciated it. Mistaking the Sea for Green Fields had a lot more quiet poetry. This was loud. This was, you know, all the sirens blaring kind of poetry, and I liked it. I really, really did. There were like 2 or 3 poems in here that I didn't love, but overall I loved it, and I was debating back and forth between a 4.5 and a 5-star, but honestly, the more I think about this collection, the more I think it's a 5-star. So second 5-star read of the month. Loved this collection, and if you are interested in poetry, particularly poetry that reads almost like speaking, it's not quite slam poetry, but it has those elements, I would absolutely recommend Pansy. My 5th and final book that I finished this month was sort of a bonus. It ended up being a bonus book for me. It covers my History of Magic requirement. I didn't actually need it, but it gives me more options when it comes to the newts in August. So that is History of Magic, which you have to read a book about witches. I read a nonfiction book, The Green Witch by Erin Murphy Hissock. Now this I thought was going to be more about like finding your spirituality in gardening, and it isn't that. It's definitely very new age, crystals, healing plants, that kind of a thing, and that might be your thing, and that's fine. It wasn't exactly my thing. I was looking more for like meditations in the garden and ways to honor your garden as a part of your spiritual growth, and this just wasn't that for me. And maybe I should have read the little subtitle and not been like, oh, this is not what I needed. I gave it 2 stars. It's whatever. It wasn't for me. It might be for you, so please keep that in mind if you decide to check it out. So all in all, I was able to read 5 books, 3 of which were audiobooks. Then I have these 2 collections. I did start 2 other books that I am very close to finishing. The Blue Sword, which is a reread by Robin McKinley, and I have about an hour's worth of reading left on that, so I hope to finish it in May. And then the Blood Print by Asma Zayonet Khan, and I cannot find my physical copy. I've misplaced it since we've come home, but I'm halfway through that book, and I'm listening to it on audio as well, both of which are wonderful, but they were kind of long, so I wasn't able to complete them this month. 5 books for me is great, and like I said, I read 5 books in the whole first quarter of the year. To have read 5 books in 1 month feels wonderful. 5 owls. I'm ready for the newts. I'm super excited. Comment down below and let me know, how did your magical readathon go? Which owls did you get? Did you get any bonus owls? Did you achieve your career? And what were you going after? I'm excited. Herbologist with a certificate in magical shopkeeping plus a bonus class in the history of magic, which I was a history major in undergrad, so it makes total sense that that would be my bonus class. I am excited to see what this translates into for the newts in August, and this has given me a lot of energy to keep reading reading. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see all of you later. Bye.